The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, once again our state has faced a monumental natural disaster. Tuesday, the 22nd of the 2nd, 2022 will be the date we'll never forget. That night, heavy rain began falling between Gympie and the Sunshine Coast. A train was derailed, 7 schools were closed. The following day I stood in this place and warned that there was what was to come had the potential to be a significant rainfall event for South East Queensland, and there was an increased risk of dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding over the coming days. Mr Speaker, no one could imagine what happened next. In those early stages, forecasters feared a month's worth of rain. What we got was 2/3 of our annual rainfall in just a matter of days. No one who saw it will forget it. Torrential, monsoonal, unrelenting rain. Ordinarily, nature reserves her fury for a single location, but not this time. It was as if a river dropped from the sky across the entire southeast. A total of 22 local council areas and 7 cities were impacted. In Gympie, I met business owners whose walls record the handwritten markers of floods dating back more than a century. This one reached higher. The waters rose around Noosa and the Sunshine Coast, Ipswich, the Lockyer Valley, Maryborough, Toowoomba, and of course in the streets in the city, the suburbs of Brisbane, Logan, Moreton Bay and the Gold Coast. Mr Speaker, it happened with terrifying speed. The swift water teams performed 657 rescues. I met Paul Edwards, who was saved from his home, and his wife was saved from his home in Ashgrove. Paul, his wife and 3 neighbours suddenly found their houses surrounded by raging torrents like rapids in the middle of a river. A swift water team pulled them through windows and off their roofs. They owe their lives to those teams. And there were countless more rescues performed by neighbours and passers-by. Mr Speaker, Queensland has more heroes than it can count. There are no words to express the respect, admiration and gratitude that we owe to those who risk their own lives helping others in their most desperate hours of need. State emergency volunteers, and I stress these are volunteers, answered 13,685 calls for help. One of them, former nurse Meryl Dray, lost her life on her way to help others. I extend to Meryl's friends, family and members of the Lowood SES my profound sympathies and those of this House. Mr Speaker, 12 others also lost their lives and 1 person is still missing. Tragically, many of them were trying to reach the safety of home when their cars were swept from flooded roads. Our hearts go out to their families and to loved ones. Mr Speaker, numbers often tell a story words cannot. In this event, a total of 16,703 damage assessments have been completed on flooded properties. 4 homes at this stage completely destroyed. 1,810 houses and commercial buildings were severely damaged, 2,554 with moderate damage and 3,514 with minor damage. 87 schools were damaged. 80,233 insurance claims have lodged to the value of $1.2 billion to date. In 6 days, 792.8 millimetres of rain fell in Brisbane, 137 millimetres more than in 1974. This is the highest 6-day figure ever recorded. 56 locations received more than 1,000 millimetres. Mount Glorious received 1.8 metres of rain. Wivenhoe Dam did the job it was built for, holding back an amount of water equivalent to 4 Sydney harbours. I hate to think of the impact if that dam did not exist. Mr Speaker, that is what happened to us. But it is what we have done to respond that shows the true strength of Queensland. Mr Speaker, these past 2 weeks I've travelled north, south, east and west. I've talked to people whose every worldly possession was piled up on their footpath, destroyed. Stacey and Kim in Scarborough, Talia and Arito in Logan. Farmer Troy Kolashevsky lost his crop in the Lockyer Valley and some of their machinery. Karen and her friends lost the entire stock at Gympie's Toy Library. I met Lois and her neighbour Dan. Dan had come all the way from Collingwood Park to help out in Goodna. Dan, the Mill Street man who found himself the accidental foreman directing the flood clean-up. Despite her losses, Lois isn't leaving the home and the neighbours that she loves. She's part of a community. Mr Speaker, I'm proud to say that when the people of this state needed their government was there to help them. I want to pay tribute to our outstanding public servants who perform this vital work. the Department of Communities and Housing established 23 community recovery hubs directly in the neighbourhoods worst affected by the floods. Here they help people access emergency hardship assistance grants of $180 per person or $900 for a family of 5 to cover flood, medication, clothing and essential items. There was also the Essential Services Hardship Assistance of $150 per person and $750 per family. At last count, they processed 61,702 applications. They've made 25,570 payments worth more than $10.6 million, benefiting more than 58,804 people in this state. 1,167 people have been helped into emergency housing, and under joint arrangements with the federal government, more than 620 small businesses and not-for-profit organisations have paid $50,000 each in recovery grants. 70 primary producers have assessed grants worth $75,000 each to date. Small businesses also are able to access extraordinary disaster assistance loans of up to $250,000. 19 local councils will receive $1 million each to assist with clean-up costs. $32 million has been announced to help sporting and recreation clubs back on their feet. Queensland Rail has repaired already 2,000 metres of track at 26 locations. Already, Maritime Safety Queensland has salvaged more than 2,000 tonnes of debris from Brisbane River, including 41 vessels. Despite frequent and savage storms, 180,000 homes which had lost power were reconnected by the 8th of March. And, Mr Speaker, the $6 million flood levy, jointly funded by my government and the Fraser Coast Council, have helped contribute to saving the city's CBD from a repeat of floods it suffered in January. But perhaps the greatest example of Queensland resilience can be found where it is most commonly on display. On the 28th of January, the playing field of Suncorp was underwater. 11 days later, it hosted the NRL curtain raiser and the Broncos won. Mr Speaker, the job of recovering and rebuilding is ongoing. That is why I've appointed Major General Jake Elwood as our flood recovery coordinator. Major General Elwood led recovery efforts after the summer bushfire disaster. He has been with me to see for myself the size of the job ahead. He has also been with the Deputy Premier and the Treasurer to listen to the stories of those people impacted. And as with all natural disasters, our response to this one will be reviewed by the Inspector General of Emergency Management. The terms of reference include dam management and emergency alerts. Mr Speaker, and I table the terms of reference for the House. It is expected it will also include public submissions. Mr Speaker, I welcome this review. It is how we continually improve so that we can serve and protect the people of this state better. It is why Queensland has one of the world's best disaster management systems in the world. We have a permanent state disaster coordinator appointed. Our mayors chair local disaster management groups, which are the backbone of our emergency response. Finally, on behalf of the people of Queensland, I want to thank the 1,183 men and women of the Australian Defence Force who came to our aid. And I note the arrival of the US Navy, and I extend my thanks and gratitude. 100 sailors from the USS Frank Cable are assisting with our recovery. Thank you to all those who have donated to our Queensland Floods Appeal. It so far has raised more than $15 million to be distributed by the Salvos, Red Cross, Give It, Lifeline and St Vincent de Paul. And, Mr Speaker, another $25 million was raised in last weekend's Australian Unites telethon to be shared between New South Wales and Queensland. Mr Speaker, members will also have the opportunity to add to that tally when the Parliament hosts our own flood appeal on the Speaker's Green on March 30th. And I thank the Speaker and the Leader of the Opposition for also participating in this. I urge members to get their tickets early. Mr Speaker, when the worst happens in Queensland, it brings out our best. When the history of this flood is written, it will not only be the scale of the disaster we remember, it will be how the spirit our communities rose to meet it. One act of nature was tempered by thousands of acts of kindness and generosity that makes Queensland what it is. Long after the floodwaters are gone, that is what will be remembered, who Queenslanders are and what we stand for. Strong, defiant and always together. Mr Speaker, creating jobs and filling jobs are a responsibility my government takes seriously. I'm proud of our achievements. In January, Queensland led the nation on job creation. Unemployment is now at a 13-year low of just 4.4%. Queensland has the highest number of SEEK job vacancies on record. Since we came to office, there have been 376,800 more jobs. And modelling by Jobs Queensland forecasts another 280,000 new jobs by the middle of 2025. So that's more than 650,000 over a decade. The dignity of work where the times are good and in times of trouble. What we have now, of course, as we recover and rebuild from the latest natural disaster to come our way, is the need for workers to fill our jobs. That was one of the key points of our Workforce Summit last week, organised so well by our Minister for Employment. As I told the summit, creating jobs and growing the economy brings new challenges. Developing skills for growth over the short term, and then as the world transitions from COVID, creating high-value, secure jobs to sustain economic growth over the long term. But there's also the here and now, finding the workers we need right now for flood rebuilding. We've shown how to do it before. Our very successful Work in Paradise campaign from the tourism industry that I know the Minister will talk about later this week. That's why I've announced another really strong and aggressive campaign, this time to attract trade workers to Queensland. We have a big job ahead of us after the floods. Insurance claims are already more than $1 billion. We have more than enough work to go around. So if you're a tradie living in another state, we want you to come to Queensland, but not from New South Wales, because we know they also need to rebuild at this time. But tradies from elsewhere, we want you to fly, drive or even run to paradise.